Hi there, I'm Rachel, and boy do I have a story for you. My algebra teacher, Mrs. Fritz, read my text messages out loud to the entire class, and she absolutely ruined my life. The thing is, these texts were not your typical day-to-day messages between a mother and daughter, or girl talk among friends about the cutest guy in school. I'm talking relationship-ending, secretive, and juicy stuff I hoped no one would ever find out about, especially my best friend Anna. It all started one day in the fourth period. I was sitting at my desk when I remembered that I'd forgotten to silence my phone. We're supposed to keep them in our lockers, but naturally no one ever does. I had never been caught before, so I was certain I could check it without being seen. I just wanted to sneak a glance and make sure it wouldn't go off. I discreetly pulled it from my pocket and checked the sidebar. Just as I suspected, the silent mode wasn't activated. I switched it on silent and casually slipped it back in my pocket. Crisis averted, right? Wrong. Mrs. Fritz, who up until this point had always been my favorite teacher, saw me messing with it. She came over to my desk and asked me to give her the phone. I should have run out of the classroom right then and there. Trust me, it wouldn't have been nearly as embarrassing as what followed. But I didn't. I handed her the phone, and then my life was over. See, what you should probably know is I've always had a crush on my best friend's boyfriend, Corey, until I found out he was cheating on her. I thought he was the perfect guy, so handsome and sweet. He treated Anna like a queen, and I had always been so jealous of their relationship. I mean, they were honestly the perfect couple. Everyone envied them. Homecoming king and queen, head cheerleader and quarterback of the football team type of stuff. They were that perfect. Everyone thought they'd be together forever, including me. That all changed, though, when I walked in on him after gym class one day in the girls' locker room and saw him making out with someone else. I ran out of there like crazy, trying to forget what I'd seen, but the image was forever imprinted in my mind. Corey caught up with me and made me promise not to tell Anna. Something I'll always regret, but followed through with anyway. He fed me a bunch of lines about how stressed he'd been lately and how he and Anna just couldn't seem to make enough time for each other. I know it sounds crazy, but I actually sort of believed him. He was so convincing. I kind of felt sorry for him until a few days later when he came on to me. He cornered me at my locker and thanked me for my discretion, then kissed me so fast I barely had time to breathe. I guess he figured that since I had already caught him cheating and promised not to tell my best friend, then maybe I'd be okay with a little something on the side. Of course I shoved him away and told him to leave me alone, now more determined than ever to tell Anna what a scumbag he was. And yet, I never could muster up the courage. I mean, she would hate me. Best friends aren't supposed to keep secrets from each other, especially secrets like these. I was really hoping she'd find out on her own, catch him in the act sort of thing. Then I wouldn't have to be the bearer of bad news. Anna and I hung out dozens of times after all of this, and I never said a word. My guilt was eating me alive, but I couldn't tell her. Whenever I saw her and Corey together, I literally wanted to puke, but I had to keep the ruse. There was no turning back now. I had come to be pretty good at hiding the truth. Well, that was before Mrs. Fritz snatched my phone and ruined everything. "Let's see what couldn't wait," she announced to the entire class after taking my phone, and then clicked on the last message I received, which was from Corey. My classmates heard everything, and I really do mean everything, including Anna, who was sitting right behind me. I didn't dare turn around. She found out about my feelings, how disgustingly perfect I always thought they were, how much I used to like Corey, what happened in the locker room, and how I promised not to tell. And the kiss. I was mortified. While she was reading the message, Mrs. Fritz herself looked shocked, probably wondering how I could do such a thing. I looked at Anna, and her face was red. She seemed angry, and like she was about to cry. I will never forget the look she gave me in that moment. She must have felt extremely betrayed. I couldn't take it anymore. I ran up to our teacher and tried to grab my phone out of her hand, pleading with her to stop, but she kept on reading. How could a teacher be so cruel? I mean, didn't she understand that every word was just adding to my humiliation? The boys in the class were laughing at me. The girls were whispering in between gasps. She gave me back my phone the moment Anna left her seat and stormed out of the classroom. The damage was already done. My big secret was out. I knew in my heart that there was no way I would ever recover from this. As you can imagine, my little fourth period incident was the talk of the school. It didn't blow over quickly like I hoped it would. It only intensified. Anna refused to speak to me, and Corey was on to the next girl in no time, almost as if Anna had never existed. My other friends couldn't trust me either, and I ate my lunch alone in the art room. It was a terrible way to spend the last few months of our senior year, but what could I do? Nobody wanted to be around me. But what really mattered to me was Anna. I tried for weeks to get her to hear me out, but she wanted nothing to do with me. My best friend since kindergarten was giving me the silent treatment, and it hurt more than you could possibly know. How could I have betrayed her like that? Why did I make that stupid promise to Corey? I kept telling myself that I was only trying to spare her the pain, but it never made me feel better. No matter how I tried to spin it, I was in the wrong. She must have really believed that I had had a thing going on with her boyfriend. After what seemed like years of begging her to listen to me, Anna finally ended her silence and agreed to meet me after school. It took a lot of convincing to get her to meet me, but it was nice to be able to talk to my best friend again. I broke the ice by admitting how sorry I was, and told her everything about the exchange with Corey in the locker room. Amazingly, the mystery girl he kissed was never revealed in the text messages everyone had heard, and I was hoping that by giving Anna her name, I'd get back in her good books. For the moment, it seemed to work. I told her it was Martha, an older student who was notorious for breaking up relationships. Anna absolutely despised Martha, having had plenty of run-ins with the voluptuous beauty before. They can have each other, she told me. And I was so happy to see that my best friend was coming to her senses. She didn't need Corey and would be much better off without him. Once a cheater, always a cheater. Besides, graduation was coming up, and pretty soon he'd just be a bad memory. I could tell things were starting to shift between us, and that my best friend was back.
Hi, I'm Erica, and for a long time, I was an only child. Some people hate being only children, but I loved it. I got all the presents on Christmas. I never had an annoying sibling to deal with. My parents spoiled me rotten. And then Brienne came along. I was 11 when she was born. Right away, I couldn't stand her. My parents paid so much attention to her. She cried all the time. It was so annoying. If I complained I couldn't sleep because of the noise, my mom was just like, she's a baby. That's what babies do. Well then, babies were the worst. To make matters harder, my parents thought Brienne was perfect. They were always talking about how beautiful she was, how smart. If you call crying and drooling smart, I guess. They went nuts the first time she smiled, and when she started goo-goo gaga-ing, they took like 8,000 videos. Meanwhile, everything I did was wrong. Erica, don't run in the house. You'll wake the baby. Erica, don't talk so loud. Don't stand so close to the crib. Go play outside. If they didn't want me anymore, why not just dump me at an orphanage and be done with it? Then they could spend all their time with their precious Brienne. It got to the point where just the sight of my baby sister made me furious. Even my teachers asked me about Brienne. I couldn't get a break from people talking about her. At Brienne's first Christmas, she got dozens of presents. What did I get? Socks. Whenever I wanted to talk to my mom after school, she was always fussing over Brienne. I seriously had fantasies about taking Brienne into the woods and leaving her there. But then something happened. Brienne was over 2, and she still wasn't talking. My parents started freaking out that something was wrong with her. They talked to the pediatrician. He did some tests that determined Brienne could understand words, she just didn't speak. The doctor said some kids start talking late and not to worry about it. But my parents were definitely worried. And as much as I hated that now they were paying even more attention to Brienne, I loved that Brienne wasn't so perfect anymore. One day, I was watching her while my parents were downstairs. She started babbling. "Shh," I told her without thinking. She looked at me with wide eyes. "Don't do that," I told her. "Don't make that noise or your head will fall off." I mimed her head popping off. At first, I wasn't sure she understood, but the next time I caught her babbling, I said the same thing, and this time she started crying. It happened a few more times, and each time I'd tell Brienne a horrible story about what would happen if she talked. I told her I had special powers that let me do it, but that she'd be in big trouble if she tried. I knew it was horrible of me, but I was just so sick of her getting all the attention. The stories got worse. I told her Mom and Dad wouldn't love her anymore if she talked. I told her they would give her back to the hospital. One day, Brienne said what sounded like "dada," and without thinking, I slapped her. I didn't hit her that hard, but I was still shocked at myself. Then she started wailing. I went to my room, heart pounding, thinking if she were ever going to start talking, this would be the time so she could tell on me. But she didn't. Before I knew it, Brienne was turning 3 and she still hadn't said a word. Now my parents were really freaking out. They took her to a bunch of specialists and were trying all kinds of weird homeopathic crystal alignment stuff to try to get Brienne to talk. The thing was, I was freaking out too. Over the past year, I'd gotten over a lot of my resentment toward Brienne. I was in high school now and had plenty to keep me busy. What did I care if my parents were obsessed with the baby? I even sort of liked Brienne now. She didn't cry as much, and she was really cute. But she wasn't talking, and it was all my fault. I filled her head with all those horrible stories, and I'd traumatized her for life. My parents delayed Brienne's preschool enrollment. They looked like they never slept. They were always on the internet looking for solutions, for new doctors to try. The guilt began to eat away at me. I needed to fix this. "Brienne," I said one day when we were alone, "Brienne, it's okay to talk. I was just being silly when I said your head would fall off. Can you say Mama? Dada?" Brienne just stared at me. "Brienne, please talk. Just say one word. If you don't start talking, they're going to take you to more doctors. That's not good, right? You don't like doctors." Nothing. "Brienne, your head won't fall off," I insisted a little louder. Brienne started to cry. After that, I researched how to encourage kids to talk. I practiced with Brienne whenever I could. I showed her pictures and magazines and repeated the words over and over, but nothing came of it. I was so scared now that I had trouble sleeping. Mom and Dad had just taken Brienne to another specialist, and they wouldn't even tell me what the woman had said. "What's going to happen if Brienne doesn't start talking?" I asked Mom. To my shock, she started crying. She couldn't even answer the question. I realized I was the worst person in the world. I'd hurt Brienne and my parents. I was a terrible daughter. No wonder they'd liked Brienne better than me. I went upstairs shaking with anger and fear. I found Brienne and showed her a magazine picture of a cat. "Cat," I said. "Say cat." Over and over, I pointed at the cat and repeated the word, but Brienne just stared at me. Then she smiled a little and clapped her hands, and I lost it. "Just say cat!" I screamed at her. "How hard is it? Just say one stupid word, Brienne. What are you, an idiot?" I kept screaming at her to talk until I heard footsteps pounding up the stairs. My mom burst into the room and found Brienne crying and me shouting at her. Mom pulled me away. "Erica, what has gotten into you?" "She won't talk," I said, tears streaming down my face. "Erica, she won't talk," I interrupted, "and it's all my fault." "What do you mean?" Mom asked. So I told the whole story, all the awful things I'd said to Brienne over the past year. "I don't know why I did it," I sobbed. "You just thought she was so perfect, and at first I thought it was funny, but now she won't talk, even though I tried to tell her the truth." Mom took me aside and calmed me down. "Erica, Brienne's last specialist diagnosed her with a developmental disability. It's not your fault she can't talk." I tried to breathe slowly and listen to what she was saying, but my heart was still racing. It's not? "No, it was very wrong of you to say those things to your sister, but that's not the reason." I wasn't the reason. I will never forget the feeling of relief her